Oh, wow. Cool. Working. Hey everyone, thanks for coming. Thanks for being online. By the way, feel free to chuck stuff in the chat. We can see it on the side of our screen. Unfortunately, it'd be really great if this was bigger. So if you can't see any of my code as I'm coding, throw stuff at me or yell at me and I will try and zoom in. I'll remember to zoom it. My name is Dan. I get called DSR. I am a solution architect at Microsoft. I've been here about nearly 6 years. I focus on data and AI, build AI solutions. That's my job. I was a coder. I like to say I'm a recovering coder, but I'm actually an evolving coder. So I'm looking at how do I change the way I write code, because I don't get as much time as I used to write code. You used to have to write code. I spend most of my time thinking, how do I build demonstration solutions, reference architectures and solutions for partners to use to build AI systems. So I don't get a lot of time to sit down and think about, well, how am I going to do this? Am I going to use Python or .NET or Rust or Go? What is the approach? I need to be up and moving with coding really, really quickly, and I need to do it efficiently, and I need to do it repeatedly because I'm building solutions across different architectures. I don't have a chance to look at a particular platform and go, I know everything about that. As a software engineer, when I used to work, pushed code to production, I would spend a lot of time understanding it. So what I'm going to share with you today is how I'm rethinking coding, how I write code. And I want to encourage every one of you to make my slides go forward. I want to encourage every one of you to think about how you reimagine your coding process. This is not, I'm not going to prescribe to you, say, you should do this. I'm going to show you how the tools work. I'm going to show you what's possible, but it's really down to you. And I'm going to say that Microsoft currently, about 30% of our code is written by AI. That number is going to increase. That doesn't mean we're suddenly going to have less developers. It means we are just going to build a lot more software and a lot more productive. Now, every one of us are going to need to be that productive. So we need to think about how do we amplify that. So what I'm going to talk to you about, agentic DevOps. I'm not going to talk in the demo. Agentic DevOps, we're going to talk about Copilot versus Copilot Chat, which are very different things, and everyone thinks they're the same. They're not. We'll talk about Copilot Chat basics, and then we're going to go into agent mode, customization, and coding tools. So everyone here heard of DevOps? I'm pretty sure there is not a hand and those who are not putting up their hand, it just can't be bothered because the pizza didn't arrive and you don't have enough energy. We moved to DevSecOps. We added security in there, which of course is critical. Some argue it should have been at the front. But now we're moving to this realm of agentic DevOps, where we've got basically a team of agents that are able to work on our behalf to solve these problems that we don't have the time. Because let's face it, it's about time. How many of us have a completely clean code base and we take care of all the technical debt that we ever have, and we never have anything to do because it's all about building product features? Come on, someone's going to put a hand up and I'm going to go, can I come and work with you? The reality is we don't have enough time. We never will. So how do we be more efficient? Agentic DevOps is what that is about to do. So just to recap, when we talk about GitHub Copilot, we often all have different views on what it actually is. There is 2 parts to it. There's GitHub Copilot, which is the code completions, which is this bit here where you start typing in your editor and it starts filling it in. It's okay. It's pretty good for boilerplate. If it's got some code similar, you're building an API, it'll fill it in. It'll start, take a good guess. It actually also, something that a lot of people don't notice is it does something called intelligent next edits, which is where you make an edit, you make a little change to some code, perhaps you refactor a variable or some way of defining some code, and you start moving your cursor down and it goes, hey, I think you should make this edit here that looks the same, and applies it, and you press tab and it just does it, and it does it faster and faster and faster. That is also part of GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot also uses what's called implicit grounding. It tries to figure out what the context is based on the code around your cursor. Now, it has a good guess. It's never as good as explicit grounding. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's also powered by GPT-4o, which is actually a GPT-4o Copilot, which is a fine-tuned version of GPT-4o. Pretty good, pretty decent. It's not the newest model out there. But we're not here to talk about GitHub Copilot. We're here to talk about some other stuff. So it was just a basic primer. The next thing you need to know is GitHub Copilot Chat is where actually all of your energy should be spent. If you're going to learn anything, you need to learn how to use GitHub Copilot Chat, and you need to learn to use how to use it well. Because you can ask it, write me a web app. Yeah, it's going to do a crap job. Just like if you told me, write me a web app. I'm going to go, what do you want? How do you, what's the, what, in what, with what, how? What does it do? All of these things are context. I haven't given you any context. Yeah, I can look at your code base, but even then that's going to take me time. So knowing how to ground Copilot with the right things using explicit context is important. But 3 modes, we're going to go through them in a minute. There's ask, agent, and edit. Ask is obvious. You ask it a question, it's going to look at your code and give you an answer and say, oh, well, based on what I think is in your code base, this is giving you the answer. Hey, I want to add add lazy loading to my repository pattern, which is what I'm about to do. How would I do that? It's going to give me an answer. Edit mode is the next mode you need to know about. That is going to make changes on your behalf, but it's very bound box. It's very much, I want you to make changes to these files to do this thing. Don't go crazy, just do what I tell you, and it will come back and say, here's the changes I've made. Do you want to keep them? Do you want to go through them, etc. And agent mode is the most powerful, which is where I spend most of my time. That is where the agent is fully, basically, it is in charge. It is looking at what it needs to do to achieve my goal, and it will work and figure out, given the tools that I've provided with, it will try and figure out what it can do to achieve it. But there's a few really important things that you will need to know about when you're chatting with an agent in one of these 3 modes. And I promise this is not all PowerPoint, this is a demo. So number 1 is hash. Hash is explicit context. It is, I want you to use this file. I want you to use this class. I want you to look at and use this tool. And a tool could be an MCP tool, or it could be something part of a Visual Studio Code extension. But you're giving it explicit instructions which help steer it. Now, you don't have to, but I guarantee that if you do, it will A, work faster, and B, give you a better result. So figure out, half the time, if I asked you, go add lazy loading to a repository, you know the code base well enough that you're going to jump straight into the repository classes, the interfaces, and you're going to start hacking away in there. But the agent will otherwise go and search your code base and start figuring it all out. If you tell it, it's going to get it right faster, quicker. And you won't waste time burning cycles looking in, going over here and looking somewhere else. At is another command. So at gives you the ability to tell the agent, go use some additional tools or systems. For example, if you had Docker running, there's a Docker Visual Studio Code extension, and some of this applies to Visual Studio as well and the other IDEs, but I'm just going to talk about Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio. You could say, go and talk to Docker, find out what Docker containers running, give me some information about that, or if the agent needs to look at, hey, I ran your Docker file and something happened, an error happened, I need to go and find out if it worked. That at command will tell the agent, you should go and look in Docker. And then finally, there's the slash command. Now, this is really the coolest part, and I'm going to show you a lot about this, this is where you give specialized commands. If you've used GitHub Copilot Chat, you'll be familiar with /test. Right? Anyone familiar with /test? A few people? So if I write /test in my command chat window, it will go, you want me to write unit tests. There's a prompt in behind this that will decide, I'm going to write some unit tests. Now, of course, you got to give it some context. I want you to write unit tests for the repository class. I want you to write unit tests for this. I want you to write playwright tests. I want you to write component tests. Ooh, I can hear myself. So this is what we call a command. We can create our own custom commands, and this is where the power of agents really starts to kick in. as I said down the bottom, I am talking about VS Code and Visual Studio. They change fast. So by the time you go home, there's possibly new features. So I would say keep up to date with what's coming, going on. So agent mode, I talked a little bit about this. I'm going to show you rather than talk to you about it. I want to talk about 4 ways to customize Copilot, because this is what you want to go home and do. When you go home, you want to customize Copilot for your repo and for your style, because I guarantee it'll 10x your productivity and make you happier, because PowerPoint just restarted. That was, I don't know what happened there. Let's try that again. Okay. No idea. So, custom instructions. This allows you to customize the basic instructions that get sent to GitHub Copilot Chat whenever you talk to it. So, hey, this is a .NET 8 repo. I've got a React front end. I like my code style to be this. I like variable names to be this style. I like to use really long variable names. I'm clean code is my friend. Solid. I adopt solid principles across everything. Custom instructions gives you a way, either at the user level, so you can create custom instructions that apply for you whenever you're coding, or for workspace, for the repo. And I recommend doing the repo, because chances are you're working across multiple projects or products or solutions. The custom instructions then go with the repo. So it tells Copilot, here's the basic knowledge about how you want something done in this repo. If you've got a big mono repo, there are things for you as well. You can create specialized instructions that work at a scope, but let's not talk about that. Prompt files is the second thing. This is amazing. This is experimental. It is basically allows you, remember I said there's a /test or a /explain. This allows you to create your own custom prompt templates that have input variables and everything like that. That can be very, very long. Because remember, the more context you give to the LLM, to Copilot, the better it will work for you. But you don't have time to type a long page. Well, you might, or if you're using a microphone, you might want to chat to, you can chat to it. But it's better to have especially if it's a repeatable process, you create a prompt file, which is a repeatable templated prompt. MCP servers is the next one. Who here has heard of MCP, or Model Context Protocol? Model Context, it's probably danced around your peripheral if you haven't heard it. It's basically a way for us to give tools to large language models. It's a client-server type approach. There are many or hundreds or thousands of MCP servers that allow your GitHub Copilot to have additional functionality. One of the tools I'm going to show is the GitHub Copilot, GitHub tool itself, GitHub MCP, which allows my agent to create issues for me, which is why, and you'll see why in a moment. But there is hundreds of really cool ones. I use the Giphy one so that I can have Copilot give me GIFs, give me fancy, memes whenever I do something wrong, which is all the time. And then finally, there is custom chat mode, which is GitHub Copilot is intended to help us. It answers our questions to the best of its ability, but sometimes we don't need just an answering bot. We need a mentor. We need a coach. We need a QA assistant. We need someone who's thinking about things from a different perspective. And this is custom chat modes is something we can create. So finally, before we get straight into the demos, this is really what you've come to hear all about, is coding agents. So all of that great stuff that I've just talked about is us interacting directly with GitHub Copilot to get it to do stuff for us. But the real power comes in when I would like a virtual teammate, which is a Copilot agent, that can go and work on my project while I'm asleep by me just defining issues and then assigning them to Copilot instead of assigning them to a teammate. So this will quite happily work on 10 issues at once, as many as you like. You will burn through your premium large language model calls, but I guarantee they will be worth it, because you will be be writing unit tests for you while you're asleep, because everyone here likes writing unit tests. Come on, everyone likes it. It's TD, you know, TDD. We all write unit tests first, right? So with that in mind, this is that's the QR code to the repo I'm going to be showing. So this is it. So this is the demo we're going to go through. Let's see how well it works, because this is non-determinism land, which means anything could happen. So this is Visual Studio Code. Apologies if you're not familiar with this, you're more familiar with Visual Studio. That's okay. I am going to zoom in a little bit, but first thing we're going to do is open chat. Now, I'll create a new chat. So this little button up here is where we're going to open chat. It actually gives us a lot of opportunity to configure things up here, manage Copilot and so on, but I'm not going to do that. Can you see that okay from the back? Because how's the view? Okay. So this is a .NET repo. It could be anything, Java, TypeScript, whatever you like. I've got this particular application is just a AI-based database explorer. It uses AI to explore a relational database. It consists of a CLI app and a core app, which contains support classes and so on. But it also has some infrastructure as code in the infra folder. Now this is Bicep, and you might be more in the Terraform. That is fine. All of this will work just, wow, that is pretty awful if I make that a little bit smaller. So this is all Bicep, could be Terraform. What I'm going to first do is show you how to do a chore with GitHub Copilot Coding Agent. Right, this is a chore we always had to do, but we never do, which is keep our infrastructure up to date. If you're using Terraform, you probably have to update your providers. If you're using Bicep, you should be using Azure Verified Modules. Basically, this is my definition. But by default, large language models don't know what the latest version of such and such is, right? They have no idea. So we can't rely on its internal knowledge. We have to use something. We have to help our agents be a little bit more intelligent. I could, of course, where is my mouse? I could, of course, say to my GitHub Copilot agent, this is really hard to do like that. I could, of course, a bit larger for you. I could, of course, just say, hey, look, update my Bicep with the latest AVM modules. If you're in Terraform, it would be an update with the latest provider, etc. But the problem is, it's actually not going to do a great job. It's going to try and figure it out. It'll take some guesses. It'll probably hallucinate versions. So what I've done is I've created myself a custom chat mode. And this is a chat mode that has specific instructions on how to update or work with AVM. Now, this could be anything. I've got a chat, let me make this bigger. I've got a chat mode for janitor, so just doing janitorial tasks. I've got a mentor. I have a .NET software expert, .NET software engineer. I might have a React software engineer expert. I've got a DevOps one in another repo, which it pretends to be Jez Humble or Gene Kim or one of the DevOps people. But in this case, I'm going to use Azure Verified Modules Bicep. Now, I don't have to do this. This is my particular process. But what I'm going to do is copy. Okay. For some reason, I can't see my mouse. There we go. Okay. You can't see, but you don't want me to type. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So go away there. So what I've written is, hey, do any of the AVM in file, I've used the hash. Remember I said explicit grounding. I've explicitly told it. It would probably figure it out because I've got current file as main, but I like to be explicit. Do they need updating? If so, what are the details that need updating? Now, whilst that works, it's going to go and start doing its thing. I'm using Claude 4. Sorry, what am I using? Sonnet 4. Model, which is a pretty decent model for this. But I'm going to show you where was that chat mode. So that chat mode actually sits over here And this is what my chat mode looks like. Let's get rid of that. So my chat mode is just a markdown file, and it contains the tools that it's allowed to use. For example, it's actually allowed to go and get Azure deployment best practices. That's a special tool that Microsoft provides to these so that it knows what's a good practice for Bicep. I've got it can look at the code base, it can edit files, but I've also said this is your description, but also this is what you do. And as you can see, I've said to it, hey, this is where you can find the documentation. You don't have to hunt all over the internet, because if you don't tell it, it will either use its internal knowledge, which is wrong, it'll hallucinate, or it will spend ages trying to find it and then come up with the wrong thing. So you tell it. I've told it, here's the documentation. I've also said, you know what? This is how you can get the latest version number. You're going to look at something called MCR, Microsoft Container Registry, which is just where this stuff is stored. So I've given it more guidance to how it will operate. Now, while it's doing that, it's quite happily done the job that I've asked it to do. So as you can see, it's gone through and it's followed my instructions. If you look, it's called the MCR, the Microsoft Container Registry. I didn't write code to do this. I just told it to do it. It's gone through and looked at them and said, you know what? You've got 2 modules which are out of date. SQL module 17, SQL should be updated to 19.1. I also gave it some more instructions that, hey, look, if it's a breaking change, you need to look more carefully at it. You need to give me an idea of what's going on. Now, I could go and ask it, fix it, right? I could say, and it will actually say, oftentimes it'll say, do you want me to fix this for you? And I could, but I'm not going to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch up to agent mode. I'm going to switch to agent mode. Now, this will not change the context, and I'm going to say this. Now, can you use create issue? Create issue tool is a GitHub tool in the GitHub MCP that will allow my agent to create GitHub issues for me. So it's going to go and create some issues in GitHub based on this file. That's the chore request template. If you're familiar with GitHub, you can template issues so that, you know, when someone goes to your repo and says, oh, this is a bug, you can collect the right information. I like my GitHub issues structured really clearly. This also has an advantage that agent will look at the content of that issue template and go, I need to provide you with more information than, this needs updating, right? Because how often do we all write issues to our teammates, update this from 17.1 to 19? GitHub Copilot will write way better, cleaner, more thorough issues. So I'm going to do that, and it will go ahead and start creating issues. Now, I am using the GitHub Copilot, sorry, the GitHub MCP server, which means that it does show up here as a tool. Now, this is a bit small for you to see, but as you can see, there's the GitHub server. Now, I have used what's called a personal access token for GitHub, because GitHub Copilot doesn't have access for me to just go and talk to GitHub and start writing issues. I had to give it a personal access token so that it can actually do the work. I've done that ahead of time, and I will show you that after this runs. But basically, I've given it that permission to do that. So now, it is running the create issue. So if I head over to the repo, oh yeah, it's closed. Open up the repo. What did I call it? What is this thing called? I'll have to find it. That's this one here. Demo. As you can see, it's now created 2 issues, 2 chores. So, and if we look at them, they're nicely, cleanly, they even tells it what it needs to do to update it. Now, this could be much more thorough. It could be fully writing a whole bunch of unit tests and a whole bunch of code. But in this case, all I'm doing is I'm now going to say, you know what? I'm going to be lazy. I'm going to go to bed in a minute. But first, I'm going to tick both of them. zoom that in for you. Tick both of them, and I'm going to say assign to Copilot. This is where the fun happens. Copilot, let's have a look at the first one. Copilot will work on both of them at once, by the way. So if I had 10 of these, if I, maybe I don't, my advice is, like a junior engineer, you don't assign them the world in one issue. You give them, you break the problem down. You say, I want you to do this thing here and this thing here. The same as this. Give it smaller, chunked up issues. You extend this API, right? Then you make the front end change to add the address box to this form. Don't give it the world, because it will start to extend the scope. Now, what's going to happen? First thing that's going to happen is that Copilot puts the eyes on, it's looking at it, and it's created a PR, right? The PR has all the information that Copilot needs to work on it. So here's the PR. It's in draft mode, and we can actually see it's assigned to Copilot. Copilot's talking about what it's going to do, and it's now started work. I can go and have a look at what Copilot is doing. And again, I do this when I go to bed. I do it just before bed, go to sleep, and I wake up in the morning and I've got all these PRs, and I love reviewing PRs because they're great. What you're going to see is Copilot start to work. It's actually running in a GitHub runner. So it's just like any other CI/CD pipeline, but it's writing code for you. So it's going to start by exploring the repository. I kept this particular demo simple because you don't want to be here all night while it's rewriting my entire application from scratch. But if you really want, I can show you. Well, I'm not sure you really want, but this is an example. So as you can see, both of those PRs are going. Did I delete the PR? I actually closed the PR. I have this PR, which was add comprehensive integration testing coverage. So this was a monster of a PR that it quite happily changed 8 files. I think it took about an hour to work, but who cares? I'm asleep. I don't care. It's not like it's being paid. So it's gone through, and I can then also go, hey, you know what? Copilot, that's bad. Fix it. Yeah, okay, you don't do that. You write something little, obviously if it is bad, write something clear. Copilot will then rerun and go through it again and take my code comments into account and actually fix my code. So you needed a good PR, good reviews. Now, I cannot merge this PR. There's a good reason why I can't merge this PR. My copilots are part of me. They're my personal team. If I was to merge the PR, I would violate lots of policies. You never review your own code, right? That's number one. Well, it's not number one, but it's high up there on the list of things you don't do. You don't review your own code. Copilot, if I've written the code with Copilot and I try and then go up here and go, yeah, review changes, yeah, go on, submit review, I can't approve this because, well, I've closed the PR, but I can't approve it anyway because it doesn't give me, because that would be a violation of the can't review your own code even if you want to. You can, of course, if you're an administrator, you can merge it anyway. So let's see how our Copilot is going with its pull request. So there we go. This one's nearly done. 5 tasks done. As you can see, it actually checks off as it's working. It has a checklist, and you can actually watch it work. But then it sort of says, "Hey, I've oh yeah, you sometimes get these warnings about it. It tries to run some specific tests, but it can't. That's okay. That's pretty normal. At the end of the day, I can then approve the workflow. So I've got a CI/CD pipeline that will go and deploy this infrastructure to Azure, run some tests on it. I need to approve the workflows, because what if, I would probably look at the code first. What if something went really weird and wrong, and it suddenly decided it wanted to deploy an NVIDIA H200, which is going to cost me, few $1,000s, something like that. You've got to have a workflow that includes that. You don't just let it go. It's not a replacement for a human. It's a accelerator. Okay, so that's how simple coding agents are, right? You can really go nuts with this stuff. I'm going to wrap up in a moment with a couple of other pro tips. So I talked to you about these different modes. What I also wanted to do was say I rethink how I write code. If you ask me to write a feature, go and write, implement feature X, Y, Z. The first thing I would do is probably look at the specification. And I would think about what it is, it's probably in the issue, the Jira task or the Azure DevOps board or wherever it's, and I'll go and review it and I'll think about what I'm going to do. I don't do that anymore. The first thing I do is I say, GitHub, I want you to write me a specification for my interpretation of what this thing is. So I am going to do this. So remember how I said I use the slash mode? I am going to use the create spec. Now you can't see that because that's terrible. I'm going to use this custom command I've created called create spec. Now that will write a specification file for me in the format that I choose, in my case Markdown. It'll put it in a spec folder inside the repo, and it will look like this. I've given very specific instructions on how it will look. Sorry, that's example code. Includes things like the requirements, the security requirements. I've spent a lot of time crafting, and by the way, this is something you can take for yourself, make it your own, do what suits you. This is, and Luke has, a shout out to Luke on the phone, because on the phone, what are we? This is not a phone. Luke has done a lot of work on this as well. A lot of the ideas come from Luke and various other people, so we're not alone. So this is the specification, the template of the specification that I create, or that GitHub creates, sorry, and then I refine it, I massage it, I make it how I want it to work. Maybe I talk to maybe I switch into mentor mode, or so I should have run that. I might get it to write the spec and then switch into software engineering expert mode. And I then say, what's going to go wrong with this specification? Where's it going to fall down? Where's the security problems? Maybe I have a security specialist mode whose job it is to argue with me about security specialized things. So I will then create the specification. And once that is done, I will then ask, I will do something like this. I will, still writing the specification, by the way, because interestingly, I won't let it write the spec because it'll take a little while. I've got a spec over here that I prepared earlier. What I might do is ask, let's close this. I might say, what performance issues might the specification have? So this is a repository pattern. It's just to read data off a disk. Lots of performance problems that could be there. I'm going to just ask it, what might you suggest for the semantic model persistence repository spec that I might improve? I would then run that. It will go through, it will look at the specification. I also use it to compare against the current implementation and say, have I met the spec? And if I haven't, I will then use the fact that GitHub Copilot can create issues. Say, for all the things that I haven't met the spec on, create GitHub issues for me. And then I go and assign them to GitHub Copilot Coding Agents and I go to bed. So I think ahead. I spend most of my time thinking about how do I create reusable process and so that I can focus on really hard coding tasks. None of these tasks that I've shown you are hard, right? Changing a version number from one to another, maybe implementing lazy loading, maybe that's something you might have implemented before. It's not a particularly difficult task. In this case, it's given me a whole lot of ideas of where things, based on my existing code, are not going to be performant. High database round trips, yeah. There's a lot of stuff, and yeah, clearly pretty crappy code. I wrote this pretty quickly. And it's actually said, why don't you go and add some additional requirements to the specification? So I'll say, yeah, go ahead, and add those to the spec. And also for each individual requirement that is new, use the create issue tool. That's the GitHub tool. And the let's use the feature request template. That's the GitHub template that just tells it how to format the issue, and to create GitHub issues. Issues for all of these. Now, I could have used the microphone and it works perfectly, really well, but if you're in a noisy office and everyone's talking to their co-pilots, you will very, very quickly get annoyed. And I actually find it's really hard. It's easier for me to type than actually start to talk to Copilot. I've just found that's it's just more comfortable for me. So what it's going to do is, yep, I'll add those performance requirements, blah, blah, blah. And as you can see over here, it's added those. And this green text indicates it is changing it. And I can determine whether I want to keep each change or not. You might say, actually, some of these things I don't want to keep. But the important thing is, now let me go and create the GitHub issues. So I love doing this for unit tests, by the way. I will have one that says, go and look at each class and determine whether I've got, a decent level of don't use code coverage, but a decent level of sort of testing over this, and create an issue for each area that I don't. And then maybe I'll just assign them to coding agents. But the point is, and I guess we're going to wrap up now, the point with all of this is that I'm not telling you how to use this stuff. What I want you to do is think about what horrible, boring tasks that you have to do as engineers can you offload so that you can have the bandwidth to focus on really hard problems, which is what you have to do. Because it's all moving so fast. The amount you have to keep in your head and learn, and new SDKs and technologies and everything else, the expectations are going like this. And you aren't going to have the time to focus on the janitorial and tech debt tasks that you never had anyway. So what's going to happen, and I work with a lot of companies that struggle with this, tech debt piles up, and you have features, that's all that counts. And at the end of the day, your ability to deliver features and a quality, reliable service depends on you to be able to take care of the tech debt. So this is one way to do that. So think about, how do you take these tools, make it your own, reinvent your process, build process rather than just building code. So that's essentially what I've hopefully covered. Are we on time? I wasn't sure what time I was meant to wrap. So with that, and just to confirm, oh, look, it's given me all the agent. I'll just quickly flip back and show you. Yes, it has. Oh, look, there we go. That's, it actually, all my builds, the nice thing is, yes, all my checks passed. My test passed, the Copilot code was written. And now I've also got a lot of issues, and I can just go and tick them all and say, assign to Copilot. And I'm done. I've done 10 times the work I would normally done, and I tell my boss that I did all the work, and that was it. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope you share back how you decide to use Copilot, and if you've got some cool prompts or some cool stuff, just share it, because we think JB, we'd love to hear what works for you, what doesn't work, where things fall down, where things don't. It's good stuff. Awesome. Thanks.